Have you ever wondered what would happen if L had the chance to go back to the very beginning of his life with all of his memories and experiences intact? Would he finally catch Kira on his first try? Would he prevent all the deaths that happened because of the Death Note? Would he outsmart Light Yagami before the genius even knew what hit him? Well, this will be a little more interesting than your average detective story because in Death Note, L actually dies. Like, for real dies. M the Shinigami writes his name down to protect Misa, and L just collapses right there in front of Light and the entire task force. So how does this even work? Well, for this scenario to happen, we'll say that right before L's consciousness fades to nothing, something strange occurs. Maybe it's because he touched the Death Note. Maybe it's because he encountered Shinigami. Or maybe the universe itself decided that L dying to supernatural powers he couldn't possibly defend against was just unfair. Whatever the reason, L finds himself opening his eyes as a young child again at Wami's house. He remembers everything, the entire Kira case, Light Yagami's identity, the Death Note rules, Misa Amane, Rem's sacrifice, his own death. Every single detail is crystal clear in his mind, and he plans to change all of it. But first, he must go through childhood again at the orphanage. You'd think being a kid wouldn't be that hard for someone like L, since he was already a genius detective even as a child. But that's the thing. L now has the mind of someone who's already solved the greatest case of his life and knows he's going to die if he's not careful. So he goes through his childhood at Wami's house, training, studying, becoming the world's greatest detective all over again. But this time, he's preparing for one specific case, Kira. Time passes and L becomes the legendary detective the world knows. He takes on cases, builds his reputation, and works with Watari to establish his network. But inside, he's waiting, counting down the years until Light Yagami finds that Death Note. And with that comes his plan to not just catch Kira, but to do it before Light can hurt anyone he cares about. Before the FBI agents die, before Naomi Misora disappears, before Watari sacrifices himself, and most importantly, before that bastard Light Yagami gets to feel like he's won even for a second. As time passes by and L continues building his detective career, he thinks about exactly when he should intervene. Because here's the thing, L knows that Light finds the Death Note when he's 17. He knows the exact year, probably even the rough time frame. So L starts monitoring the Yagami family well before anything happens. Which really just makes sense because Soichiro Yagami is a high-ranking police officer and L already knows Light is going to be his greatest enemy. So when Light is still just a normal high school student, L is already watching. Not obviously, not in a way that would alert anyone, but he's got Watari keeping tabs on the family, tracking Light's movements, monitoring any unusual activity. And just because L's getting a second chance doesn't mean he's gonna be reckless about it. The guy is simultaneously a genius and someone who learned the hard way that supernatural powers can kill you even when you know they exist. And while the past L was confident in his methods, his inability to prove Light's guilt before Rem intervened caused his death. So this time, he'll make sure to have evidence that'll stick before making any moves. That means L's already preparing for the Death Note before it even appears. He researches Shinigami legends, studies supernatural phenomena, and prepares his team for possibilities that sound insane. When Watari looks at him weird, L just says he's covering all bases. And then it happens! L's surveillance picks up the exact moment Light Yagami finds a black notebook in his school courtyard. The cameras don't show what's written on it, but L knows. That's the Death Note. The weapon that's going to turn Light into the world's greatest serial killer. So things are about to get very different from before. Instead of waiting for criminals to start dying, L immediately puts a plan in motion. He knows Light is going to test the notebook, knows he's going to kill that biker he saw on TV, and sure enough, the death happens exactly as L remembers. But this time, L doesn't wait. He doesn't let Light build up his body count. Instead, L does something that would have saved him so much trouble the first time around. He acts immediately. And so, if you want to avoid getting manipulated by a sociopathic high schooler with a god complex, I would advise that you like and subscribe. But anyway, normally L would have waited until Kira killed enough people to establish a pattern, but L's not making that mistake again. He already knows Light is Kira, knows exactly how the Death Note works, knows every rule, every limitation. So instead of the Lind L Taylor trap, L does something way more direct. He shows up at the Yagami household, not as L, obviously, that would be stupid. He comes as a representative from 2O University, offering Light an early admission interview because of his exceptional grades. Soichiro is thrilled. Light is suspicious, but can't refuse without looking weird. And L sits across from 17-year-old Light Yagami, looking him dead in the eyes, and knows he's staring at a mass murderer who hasn't even gotten started yet. During the interview, L asks seemingly innocent questions about justice, about morality, about what Light would do if he had the power to change the world. And Light, being Light, can't resist showing off his intelligence. He talks about creating a better world, about eliminating evil, about becoming a god, not in those exact words, obviously. But L hears it, recognizes the same rhetoric that Kira used in his previous timeline. After the interview, L leaves with a smile, because Light just confirmed everything L needed to know. His ideology hasn't changed. He's already thinking like Kira. He just hasn't acted on it yet beyond that one test kill. But L knows he can't arrest Light yet. One death isn't enough. There's no evidence connecting Light to anything. And more importantly, L needs to understand something crucial. Does the Death Note exist in this timeline the same way it did before? Are the Shinigami the same? Is Ryuk going to appear to Light like he did originally? So L does something he didn't do before. He waits and watches, but this time with full knowledge of what's coming. When criminals start dying of heart attacks, L isn't surprised. When the media starts calling the killer Kira, L already has a task force assembled. When the world starts panicking, L is ready. But here's where things get different. L knows that Light's biggest advantages in the original timeline were surprise and L's ignorance about the Death Note. Well, this time L isn't ignorant. And Light has no idea that L already knows everything. So when L does the Lind L. Taylor broadcast, it's not actually a trap for Kira. It's a message for Light specifically, because L makes sure the fake L says things only Light would react to. References to justice, to creating a new world, to being a god, and sure enough, Light kills Taylor immediately. But this time, L expected it, wanted it even, because now Light thinks he's outsmarted L by proving he can kill remotely. What he doesn't know is that L already knew that and just needed Light to confirm he's following the same pattern as before. Time continues to pass. L sends the FBI to investigate, knowing full well that Light is going to kill Ray Penber. But here's the difference. This time, L has Penber wired with equipment that'll capture everything. Every word Light says, every action he takes. When Penber dies, L has evidence. Not enough for a court maybe, but enough to know for certain that Light and Kira are the same person. And when Naomi Masora comes forward with her theory, L doesn't let her investigate alone. He meets with her personally, listens to her deductions, and most importantly, he keeps her safe. Because L knows that Light is going to try to kill her the moment he finds out she exists. So when Light encounters Naomi by chance outside the police station, L is watching. Watari has people stationed nearby. The moment Light starts talking to her, trying to extract her real name, L intervenes, not directly, but suddenly Naomi gets a phone call from her FBI contact and she has to leave immediately. Light watches her go, frustrated, and has no idea that L just saved her life, but L knows he can't just keep saving people forever. Eventually, he needs to actually catch Light, and that requires evidence that'll hold up. Evidence that proves the Death Note exists and that Light is using it. Then something happens that L was both expecting and dreading. Misa Amane gets the second Death Note, because apparently Rem still exists in this timeline, still gave Misa the notebook, and Misa is still obsessed with helping Kira. When Misa starts killing with just faces, L immediately knows who she is, knows she has the Shinigami eyes, knows she's going to track down Light, so L moves fast. He arrests Misa before she can ever meet Light in person, and this is where L's knowledge really pays off, because L knows that if he arrests Misa, Rem is going to threaten to kill him to protect her. He knows that Rem is the one who killed him in the original timeline, so this time L takes precautions. He doesn't personally interrogate Misa, doesn't even go near her. He has other members of the task force handle it while he monitors from a distance. And when Rem appears to threaten whoever's investigating Misa, L is ready. See, L knows the Shinigami rules now, knows that if a Shinigami kills to extend a specific human's lifespan, that Shinigami dies. And he knows that Rem cares about Misa enough to take that risk. So L sets up a situation where Rem can't kill him without it being obvious that she's extending Misa's life. He makes sure that Misa is already scheduled for trial, already convicted based on evidence they've gathered. If L dies now, it doesn't save Misa, she's still going to prison. The trial is already set, the evidence is already submitted. Killing L wouldn't change anything except prove that Kira has supernatural help. Rem realizes the trap. L has made himself strategically worthless to kill, and without being able to eliminate L, Rem can't protect Misa from the legal system. So Rem does the only thing she can do. She convinces Misa to give up ownership of the Death Note, erasing her memories and making her genuinely innocent of the crimes she's about to be tried for. But L expected this too, because he knows how the Death Note ownership rules work. When Misa gives up the notebook, L tracks where it goes, follows the chain of ownership, and eventually it leads him right back to Light. Of course, Light being Light, he has a backup plan. He's already noticed that L is investigating him more aggressively than before, already suspects that somehow L knows more than he should. So Light does what what he did in the original timeline, he gives up his own Death Note ownership, losing his memories of being Kira. But here's where L's advantage becomes overwhelming, because L knows this strategy, knows that memory loss Light is genuinely innocent in his own mind, knows exactly how and when Light will regain his memories. So L plays along, releases Light, works with him to catch the third Kira. Higuchi lets everything play out exactly as it did before, except this time, when Light touches the Death Note again and regains his memories, L is ready. See, L has spent this entire time preparing for one specific moment. The moment when he can prove beyond any doubt that Light Yagami is Kira. And to do that, he needs Light to incriminate himself while being recorded, while having witnesses, and while holding the actual Death Note. So when they capture Higuchi and retrieve the Death Note, L sets up a test. He tells the task force that he wants to verify something about how the notebook works. And he asks Light to touch it while they monitor his vitals, his pupil dilation, his micro expressions. Light can't refuse without looking suspicious. And the moment he touches that notebook, his memories come flooding back. And even though Light is good at controlling his expressions, L is watching for the exact signs he saw before, that microsecond of recognition, that flash of remembrance, that brief moment where Light Yagami becomes Kira again. L catches it, records it, and immediately moves to arrest Light. But Light is fast. He's already thought of this possibility, already has contingency. He tries to grab a hidden piece of Death Note, tries to write L's name. But L anticipated this too, because he knows Light's tactics, knows every trick, every backup plan. L has people positioned to stop Light the moment he moves. And before Light can write a single letter, he's restrained. The task force is in shock, Soichiro is devastated. But L has evidence now, video footage of Light's expression changing the moment he touched the notebook, proof that he knew exactly what it was. And when they interrogate Light, really interrogate him, now that they know he's Kira, the walls start closing in. Light tries every manipulation tactic he used before, tries to convince them he's innocent, that he was being controlled, that Kira is a separate entity. But L knows all these arguments, has heard them before, and this time he doesn't fall for any of it. Then comes the trial, and this is where L's preparation really shines, because he doesn't just have evidence of Light using the Death Note, he has testimony from Naomi Masora, who's still alive and can confirm Light tried to extract her real name. He has Misa, who gave up the notebook and lost her memories, but whose previous actions as the second Kira can be verified. He has the FBI agents who survived because L kept them safe. Most importantly, he has the Death Note itself, and he's figured out how to prove it works without killing anyone. See, L knows the Death Note has rules written in it, knows that one of those rules is fake, added by Rem to protect Light. The 13-day rule that says if you don't write a name within 13 days, you die. In the original timeline, L wanted to test this rule, but the task force refused on moral grounds. This time, L doesn't ask for permission. He sets up a controlled experiment that exposes the fake rule without risking innocent lives. And when the rule is proven false, it confirms the whole thing was designed to protect Kira. Light's defense crumbles. Every argument he makes, L has a counter for. Every lie he tells, L has evidence to disprove. And finally, Light breaks. Not dramatically, not with some epic villain speech, just a quiet moment where he realizes he's been completely outmaneuvered by someone who somehow knew his every move before he made it. After the trial, after Light is convicted and sent to prison for life, after the Death Note is secured and destroyed, L finally allows himself to relax. For the first time in this entire timeline, he eats sweets without thinking about Kira, sits in his weird crouch without analyzing Light's next move, just exists as himself. Watari asks him how he knew, how he predicted everything so perfectly, and L just smiles and says it was instinct, which isn't entirely a lie. He doesn't tell anyone about his memories, about the other timeline where he died, about the future he prevented. Some secrets are better kept. Years pass. Crime rates drop naturally without the fear of Kira. People who would have died into the Death Note live full lives. Naomi Masora continues her FBI career, so Ichiro Yagami eventually comes to terms with his son's crimes, though it never stops hurting, and L continues being the world's greatest detective, solving cases, helping people, living the life he never got to finish before. But sometimes late at night, he thinks about the other timeline, about the version of himself who died without ever proving Light was Kira, about Nier and Mello having to finish what he started, about all the people who suffered because he wasn't fast enough, and he's grateful for the second chance, grateful that he could prevent all that pain. But he also wonders, does Light remember? Does some part of Light in his prison cell have memories of a timeline where he won, where he became a god and ruled the world for years before finally being caught? L doesn't think so, because if Light remembers, remembered, he'd know why L was always one step ahead. He'd realize that L wasn't just a genius detective. He was a time traveler who'd already lived through Light's entire playbook once before. But that's the thing, L's greatest victory isn't just catching Light. It's catching him so completely that Light never even knew he was being played. In the original timeline, Light died knowing he'd been outsmarted by Nier. But in this timeline, Light dies in prison decades later, probably still convinced that L just got lucky, that if one or two things had gone differently, Kira would have won. He never realizes that L was playing a completely different game, one where L had already won before Light even found the Death Note. And honestly, that's way more satisfying than the original ending, because at least in the first timeline, Light got to feel like a god for a while, got to experience power, control, and victory before his downfall. But in this timeline, Light goes from high school student to convicted murderer without ever achieving anything. His reign as Kira lasts less than a year. His grand vision of a new world dies before it can even begin, and he spends the rest of his life in prison wondering what went wrong, wondering how L knew, wondering if he ever really had a chance at all. The answer, of course, is no. The moment L was reborn with his memories, Light's fate was sealed, and folks, that's what would happen if L was reborn with all of his memories. So what did you think? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to like, subscribe, press all the buttons. You know how this works. Thanks for watching, and bye-bye.